Test, 1, 2, 3. Test, 1, 2, 3.
That's about as good as I can get it without banging all the way up.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
I think that'll work.
That's good out there.
It might be. He doesn't test the way he talks anyway.
That's right. Eddie. Well, y'all did find me. I thought I could hide. Nah. Where do you shut this one off?
Right here up at top. Just press and hold till.
Well, good morning again. This is our concluding lesson. Hold the applause. You know, I'm not real sure how many different versions of the Bible just in this one room right now. Of course, if you got a phone with the Bible program on it, is this a little too loud? Is that better? Look. Well, if you got a phone, you can have probably 100 different versions that you never use. And I guess it doesn't really matter, because whatever Bible you've got originally came from what was written in Hebrew or Aramaic and Greek. And you know, I mentioned Aramaic. I had a little part of that, one of the previous lessons about Aramaic language, but I believe it's Ezra and Nehemiah, isn't it? It's got a little Aramaic mixed in. Daniel, yeah. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. It's amazing if you stop and think about it. Of all the different versions of the Bible, you really get right down to it, they all pretty much say the same thing. Now, there are a few exceptions, I suppose, but it's really, truly amazing that with all of these changes and additions and translations and so forth, at least the plan of salvation is pretty much still there. Doesn't matter. But one problem with translators is there is no word-for-word equivalent from one language to another. And you take a word in Hebrew or Greek, and you look it up in an interlinear dictionary or whatever, and you will find where it gives the definition of that word. You might find a whole page full of words that could mean. So it kind of depends on the context it's used, and etc. So another problem I have, and that will change things up a little bit, but still, all these versions tell the same story, basically. Now, how do we get all of these, especially in the Old Testament, how did we get all that transferred from that long ago to the present? Well, all these copies that were made of the Torah and other parts of the Old Testament, they were meticulously copied from one to another. And they had strict rules and regulations. And there were people watching even the copiers, there were people checking them. And as a result, we ended up with an Old Testament that's pretty accurate. Well, that kind of brings me to another story. Sometimes we have this Greek and Aramaic and Hebrew. It gets translated over into other languages. Now, as you know, you can find a Bible, entire Bible, just about any language in the world today. Now, there's probably some that don't, but vast majority. And it's truly amazing. Back when the religious world thought it would be a great idea to make Latin the religious language, well, they had to have a Bible in Latin. Now, sometimes I run into in my preparation, run into little nuggets that I either forgot or learned for the first time. And one of them was this. When they converted or translated over into Latin, the word for Gentile in Hebrew was goy, or goyim, or hagoyim, which means nations. All right? The word Gentile never occurred in the original. It was goy, or some variation of that word. And as a result of that, we ended up in Latin. They looked at that word goy in the original language, and they changed it to gentes. There's that word for word translation. And then gentes gradually turned into Gentile. So what you see in your Bible as gentes, in the Old Testament at least, was originally goy. All right, meaning nation or nations. Now in the New Testament, the Greek had the same problem, that word for word thing. So they used the word ethnos. We're familiar with that as ethnic, race, so forth. And as a result, it means the same thing, back to nation again. So when you see nation in any form in the Old Testament, basically that's saying anything other than what turned out to be the Jewish religion. All the others were nations. Now, I looked up a couple in the Old Testament. Ezra, they have, it depends on which version you have. It just goes all sorts of directions. But I think it was the NIV refers to it in Ezra 6:21. You might check me out there. Ezra 6:21. I think they refer to it as Gentile neighbors. And if you got a different version, it's going to say something else. King James just said heathen. That cuts to the chase there. Nehemiah, same thing. That goy in our NIV says Gentile enemies. Okay, so that brings us to what I wanted to finish up our series with, and that is the gospel being brought to goy, gospel being brought to gentes, gospel brought to Gentiles, somebody other than the Jews. Now, we've already talked about this, and especially last week, about this gospel is supposed to be taken to the Jews first. And Matthew 15:24, I'm just going to paraphrase these since we've been through it already. He talks about taking it to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Matthew 10:5 refers to the lost sheep of Israel. And that was the original direction. Acts 2